Hi book lovers, today I'm going to do the Booktube newbie tag and answer a few of the questions that I've seen going around Booktube on the newbie videos, as I'm obviously very much a Booktube newbie. So I'm going to talk about why I decided to start this channel, the things I'm hoping to bring to the channel, what I'm currently reading. I'm going to talk about a book that I recently started and just haven't been able to finish. I'm going to talk about a popular book that I really didn't like and the oldest book that I've read. So to start off with, to let you know a little bit more about me and why I decided to start a booktube. I've been watching booktube now for quite a while. It's book talk as well I've recently got into, and I love books, so watching videos about books has just become my absolute guilty pleasure. And I've kind of wanted to do this for a while, but been quite nervous about it. As you can tell, I'm still finding my feet. I'm not very techy. I'm still learning how to make the videos, how to kind of use YouTube and YouTube Studio. But I thought if I wait till everything's perfect and I know how to do everything before I begin, I won't ever begin. So I've just kind of decided to throw myself in, really. And I'm just hoping to kind of have some fun, talk about the things that I love talking about. If eventually I was able to monetize my channel, it would be great, because to tell you a little bit more about me, so I'm a writer. I've had 8 books published as Michelle Kelly between 2013 and 2017. I'll show you my last book that I had published under Michelle Kelly, and that was Death at the Yoga Cafe, and that was published by Macmillan, and it was published in the US. After that came out, I took a couple of years off writing because I had my youngest child. And then when I went back, I was actually offered some ghostwriting work, and I became a ghostwriter, which I loved. And I'll probably do a longer video about that, because I think it's an industry that people have a lot of questions about. And I've absolutely loved doing that work. But I've had to really slow down recently due to disability. I have something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is sort of getting worse as I get older, and it can cause a lot of chronic pain, a lot of chronic fatigue. I've lost a lot of my mobility, and my ability to sort of keep typing and keep sort of producing work has kind of really gone down. So I'm currently having a break from work. So I thought I'd use this time to start this channel. And if in the future I'm able to monetize it, and it could then help me to replace some of the income I'm going to lose by not being able to work so much, then that would be great. If not, then at least it could be a cool hobby. I can have some fun. I can talk to my heart's content about books, because although some of my friends read, none of them love books as much as me. My husband's not a reader, he's more of a movie watcher, so no one wants to listen to me chatter on and on about books. Booktube is the ideal place to do that, so why not give it a go? In terms of what I can bring to my channel, I'm obviously hoping to talk about the books that I read, to review them, to maybe do some deep dives on certain trends, on some of the classics. What I think I can bring that's maybe unique is the fact that I am also a published author and a ghostwriter. So I've worked within a lot of different genres and with different writers. I've also worked as an editor. I've studied English literature at the University of Cambridge in the UK. I'm currently doing an MA in creative writing and children's literature at the Manchester Met. So I feel like I have a foot in both camps as a writer and a reader. And I'm hoping to kind of bring some of all of that experience and knowledge together to the channel, and kind of be able to look at things from all those different angles. Mostly though, I am just a huge book lover. So I've been reading for as long as I can remember. I was quite an early reader and I loved books. The first book I remember is one that my dad would read to me when I was really small. And it was like 365 stories, and there would be one little bedtime story for each day of the year. My dad would read that to me every night, and quite early on I started picking it up in the daytime and reading those stories back to myself, and that just hooked me. And then I was just asking constantly for more and more books. I remember the day my mum got me a library ticket, being just so excited. I think you're only allowed to get 6 books out on a library ticket then, and I thought that was amazing. So I've always been a big reader. I've always read across lots of different genres. I'll read lots of different things. I love to try new things. I love all the new trends that are coming out now, with book talk and things. I love checking out all of the new popular books. I also love finding hidden gems of books that maybe people haven't heard of so much, and I do also like quite a lot of the classics. Jane Austen and Charles Dickens are probably my favourites. I think the only genre I'm not keen on is probably literary fiction, and that can be quite hard to define, but it tends to be the books that sort of win the big awards, and are very, very beautifully written, but are perhaps more about the writing and the theme and possibly the characters than they are about the plot. So unlike genre fiction, as in romance, you're going to expect a certain sort of type of plot and a happy ending, and in a thriller you're going to expect a certain plot with plot twists. Literary fiction, I think, can be much more experimental, sometimes much more reflective, much more based in the inner lives of characters. And although there are some amazing literary fiction books out there, as well as books that sort of cross genres, so you do get literary fiction that's also a thriller or that also has romance elements, but it's, as a genre, it's not something I tend to pick up very much. I do like a story. I like a sort of traditional plot. I like genre fiction. I like popular fiction, and it always makes me laugh. I think that people associate the classics perhaps with a more literary reader, but actually, and I find a lot of people in academia sometimes seem to forget that the classics were the popular books of the day. Jane Austen was the sort of queen of snarky chick lit back in the Regency period, and it's that sort of kind of plot-driven popular fiction that I really love. So I definitely want to talk about a bit of both. You won't be seeing probably much literary fiction or kind of, award-winning fiction on this channel, but you will find lots of everything else. So in terms of what I'm currently reading, I recently picked up this short story by Kate Atkinson from the library. I want to get into reading more short stories, and I think this looks like there's going to be a lot of magical realism. She's the author of Shrines of Gaiety, which I haven't actually read, but has been on my TBR for ages. And I think this might actually slightly cross over into the literary fiction genre. I know she's a very accomplished writer, but it does look fun. So according to the blurb, talking about some of these stories, we meet a queen who makes a bargain she cannot keep, a secretary who watches over the life she has just left, and a man whose look changes when a horse speaks to him. That sounds really interesting. So I'm going to try a few of those and see how I find them. Also, I usually have a non-fiction and a fiction on the go at the same time. And the non-fiction I'm reading this month is for a book I'm thinking about writing. If my health will allow me, I'd like to have another shot at publishing under Michelle Kelly before I'm sort of not able to do that. And that's called Medical Meddlers, Mediums and Magicians by a guy called Dr. Keith Suter. And I picked this up in the charity shop for, I think, $1.99. And it's about the Victorian age of credulity, when Victorians are really interested in spiritualism, in life after death, in magic, in new advances in medicine. It was like a really interesting read. It also tickled me a little bit when I read the author acknowledgements at the front, and he thanked his agent. He thanked a lady called Isabel Atherton from Creative Authors Limited, and she's also my agent, so that made me smile. But the book I'm currently really getting my teeth into, and I'm nearly finishing actually. This was a surprise big read for me. I'm loving it, and that's Fourth Wing. I know this is really popular at the moment. It's kind of like the V-Dragon book. And I only really picked this up because I heard that the main character had EDS, and so I wanted to read it for the disability representation. I wasn't sure whether it would be my sort of thing. I read a lot of fantasy when I was younger. I don't read so much today. I'm absolutely loving this book. I might do a longer video just on this. I know there's already been a lot said about this book, but it's just so good. There is so much to say about it. I can definitely recommend this if you like fantasy. I will say it's not cozy fantasy. There's some really dark themes in this. There's quite a lot of violence and unaliving of people, but it's just a fantastic story, and the romance is pretty hot in it as well. So I'm really enjoying this. Excited to see how it ends. If the end is enjoyable as the rest of the book, I'll definitely be ordering the sequel. A book that I started quite recently and haven't finished, and I'm not sure if I will finish it. I want to. I'm just not sure, is Dune by Frank Herbert. I'm not a huge sci-fi reader, but the ones I have read I have enjoyed, and I wanted to see the film. I always like to read a book before I watch the movie of the book. It's just a personal preference. So I thought I'd read this, and I'm not sure why I'm struggling to pick this book back up. It's the world building in it is fantastic. It's brilliantly written. It's very intricate. Characters are interesting. The world is interesting. I feel like maybe the plot's a little bit slow. It could be quicker, but it's not even that. I don't know what it is. I think it feels like quite a heavy read. This isn't a light read by any means. I think I have to really pay attention to this book, and I just haven't been in the mood for it. Although when I've been reading it, I've been enjoying it. I'm just struggling to pick it back up. But then I found out that the Dune series never finishes because the author sadly passed away before they finished the last book. And the last book that we do have ends on a cliffhanger. So now I'm thinking, do I want to put myself through 6 books of quite intense reading to never find out what happens? So as it stands, Dune is currently a DNF, but I do hope to finish it at some point. The oldest book that I've read, so the oldest book I've actually read would be Studying Medieval Literature at university, and it would probably be Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. But I'm not a fan of medieval literature. I would never have chosen to pick that up through choice. So the oldest book that I've probably read through choice, and which I loved actually, would be Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. And I think this was published in maybe 1811. Maybe wrong there. I think it was 1811. It's not actually her first book. Her first book was Northanger Abbey, but that wasn't published until after she died. So this is probably the oldest classic that I've read. I love this. It's such a brilliant book. Not really very much on the romance. The romances in Sense and Sensibility are a bit blur, but just the relationship between the sisters, the characters, the whole vibe of this book I absolutely love. I did do, my first video was on Jane Austen's books, and I ranked them in order of how romantic I thought they were. So this one comes quite low down. But in terms of favourites, this is really high up for me. And then finally, a book that I didn't like but is really popular, and so this is quite an unpopular opinion, and I did a whole other video on this, would be everyone's current favourite, It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. And it's not that I didn't like her as a writer. It's quite a light-hearted reading style. I can see why she's popular. I haven't read any of her other books, so I've only got this to go on, but I can see why a lot of people like her books. But it's just the topic in this. I didn't think it was well handled at all. And I've got like I said, I've got a whole video kind of explaining why. And this just left me feeling really quite uncomfortable and upset. I definitely wouldn't recommend this to anyone who's quite sensitive to themes of abuse or is likely to have any kind of trauma response to that sort of material. Really didn't like this book. Definitely won't be going to see the movie. Don't really understand why it's so popular, because I just found there were some good things about this book, don't get me wrong, but there were also parts of it that I just found really concerning. And so, without throwing any shade Colleen Hoover's way, because she's obviously done fantastically, and I'm sure her other books aren't dealing with subjects like this. I don't really know. I know she's usually marketed as a romance author, but this one I thought was it just handled the content so badly. It's kind of put me off trying her other works, if I'm honest. I don't know. I feel like maybe I should try something else just so I can give her like a fair chance. But this has really put me off. So yeah, I won't say any more about that. Like I said, I have got a whole video on it. But that was definitely like my least favourite read of this year, and probably for quite a while actually. My favourite read of the year so far would be a book called The Unmaking of June Farrow, and I don't have a copy of that because I read it out of the library, by a writer called Adrienne Young. and it was another one that I didn't think I'd enjoy. It's a time travel romance. I'm not a big time travel fan, but I read it as part of a book club, and it was a 5-star read. I just absolutely loved it from beginning to end. So that's my favourite book so far this year. My favourite book of all time is probably A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I read an abridged version as maybe I was 8 or 9 and absolutely loved it. And the full book I've probably read 8 times over the years, and I love it more each time, and I always cry at the end. If you're a fan of classics or just sort of really good historical stories, I can really recommend that one. And yeah, so that's it. So for the rest of the month, I'm going to be finishing Fourth Wing, hopefully picking up the sequel, and I will be back soon with a summer reading wrap-up video. So if you'd like to get notifications of that coming out, please do subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you again soon.